Hello and welcome to Talking Point. Last month, Parliament passed several changes to election laws in preparation for the next general election. These include allowing for more opposition voices in Parliament, more single-seat constituencies and for group representation constituencies or GRCs to be downsized. Now, the opposition appears to be gearing for an impending general election. Candidates have been revealed. Discussions about alliances between opposition parties have been tossed about. But is there an opposition strategy ahead of the next general election? Should there be one? What is the opposition doing to prepare? We have Kenneth Jeyaretnam, Secretary General of the Reform Party, founded by the late J.B. Jeyaretnam, and Eugene Tan, political analyst, and my former co-host, journalist, editor, commentator, Pian Balji. Now, welcome to the show. Kenneth, let's start with you. Do you have a strategy currently for contesting the next general election, and what is it?
Well, I'd like, first of all, to say, Deborah, it's very difficult to have a strategy when we haven't seen the boundaries. And we call upon the government, as we have several times, to release the boundaries early, to give us adequate time for preparation, and to make the boundary review process transparent and objective. We've taken the strategy of announcing our first slate of candidates early. That's because we don't have the luxury of a long list of candidates who can be brought out later. We want to get people to know them.
Beyond candidates and revealing candidates, I mean, what else would you be looking at as you in the lead up to the general election?
Well, we're focusing on. We've announced that our target is at least 2 GRCs and 2 SMCs. But our strategy ultimately must be to form the government, not in this election, but longer term. That is the proper aim of a political party, and that is why we have put out a comprehensive slate of policy ideas or proposals, just to show that the PAP is does not have a monopoly on ideas.
Okay, let me turn to Eugene now. Eugene, do you think the opposition can have a strategy ahead of the next election? I mean, the opposition is a diverse group of parties. Can we talk about a strategy at all?
I think at a basic level there should be, right? Because I think to deal with the dominant PAP, the opposition parties need to at least agree on some common principles, right? So one of them could be, for example, no three-cornered fights, and I suppose if they could get early, into deciding, which constituencies they want to look at, that would help, the parties to get ready for the election. So you're right. I mean, the opposition is a diverse group, and we shouldn't be looking at an overarching policy, but certainly, that there should be some common principles.
But let's talk about whether or not this is realistic. I mean, we've seen opposition in the last elections working together or not. Do you think it's actually possible for the opposition parties this time round to come up with a strategy to carve out areas to avoid three-cornered fights?
I think I feel looking at what has happened previously, and also looking at what has just recently happened with the attempts to form a coalition between Mr. Jeyaretnam's party and Mr. Cham's party.
Yeah, I mean that's still ongoing.
Yeah,
that's right.
We're still talking.
No, I'm just.
That's great. At least you're still talking.
I'm not talking in the sense that it has failed. I'm talking about it in the sense that there has been problems, and there will always be problems. But what I'm saying is that it is better for them, for the opposition parties, to talk about general things, and not get into a coalition, in a firm coalition. That's my view. That's going to cause a lot of problems because there are other issues about personalities and things like that. They should go and say, okay, these are the things that we agree on, no three-cornered fights, and how are we going to share, the seats if we finally get into parliament. I mean, those kind of things, But it should not be a firm coalition.
Kenneth, how would you react to that?
Let me just point out that the need for these vehicles, such as the SDA, is primarily driven by the difficulty what the PAP have done, which is to increase the size of GRCs to bring in the GRC system.
Okay,
so we say go back to SMCs, abolish GRCs. Only 3 African countries, I think, have a similar system to the GRC, and in all of them, when the GRC was introduced, the share of the opposition in Parliament was dramatically reduced.
Okay, but given that reality today is that there will be now more single-member constituencies, 12, and there'll be smaller-sized GRCs, does this help the opposition work together or not? I mean,
we've consistently seen the number of SMCs has been reduced consistently.
Over the years. Yeah, this is the first time it's gone up.
And you know, it's bogus to say that that's a way of protecting minority representation in Parliament, because you can do that through a proportional representation minority slate, or we could have 2 or 3 member GRCs to allow for minority candidates. But why has the size of GRCs been increased over the last 20 years, starting off at 3 and 4, and now we're up to 5 and 6?
Okay, but having said that, not that they've come down, and okay, let's talk about how you'll be working. Would you be even open to working with the other parties to carve out areas to contest, or carve out single member seats to contest? And what are some of your considerations if you were to think of something
I mean,
like that?
our aim is, we have an obligation to the people of Singapore to see that every seat in Parliament is contested.
Okay.
We cannot have a situation where 47% of the seats were walkovers in 2006 and I think 66% in 2001. I mean, on our walkabouts, the consistent theme of most of the people who speak to us is, are you coming here? We haven't had a chance to vote sometimes for 20 or 30 years.
Okay.
So I would challenge the government to, in areas where there are walkovers, to either have a by-election at a later stage, or else to have maybe a referendum, and if they score less than 50% in those areas, to have a by-election later.
To go for a short break right now. When we come back, what other considerations the opposition bears in mind when it decides to contest in a constituency? Stay with us.